Today we will learn about participial phrases. A participial phrase is a participle with its modifiers and complements all working together as an adjective. Let's review what a participle is. It's a verb form, ing or ed or an ed form, that is used as an adjective, like the running clock or my bouncing ball. Here are 3 ways to do participial phrases. 1. We can have a participial phrase with an adverb. Flying low, the plane circled the airport. Okay, flying is the participle and low is the adverb. We could have also said flying slowly, flying recklessly, flying blindly, or flying out. 2. We can have a participial phrase with a prepositional phrase. The crowd standing on the ground watched the airplane. Standing is the participle and on the ground is the prepositional phrase. We could have also said standing in the mud, standing with wide open mouths, standing under the bright blue sky, or standing next to the control tower. 3. We can have participial phrases with a complement. A cheer went up for the woman piloting the small craft. Piloting is the participle, craft is the complement. In this case, a direct object. Piloting, we could also say piloting the boat, piloting the B-52 bomber, or piloting the battleship. Now let's try a few practice sentences. Write the participial phrase. The students riding in the bus were excited to go on the field trip. Okay, you should have written the students riding in the bus were excited to go on the field trip. Okay, write the participle. Okay, you should have written riding because that's the ing word. Write the participial phrase. Eagerly waiting for the next arrival, the students packed their bags. Okay, you should have written waiting for the next arrival because that phrase starts with the ing word. Okay, now write the participle. Okay, you should have written waiting. Now let's write the participial phrase. Fascinated with the bug, the child watched it for hours. You should have written fascinated with the bug because that starts with the ed word. Okay, now write the participle. Okay, you should have written fascinated because that is the ed word. Okay, now you do some exercise sentences. Write the participial phrase. Gaining fame in 1928, Amelia Earhart was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. Okay, write the participial phrase. She was not the pilot, but a passenger riding in that plane. Okay, write the participial phrase. Flying solo, Earhart first soared across the Atlantic Ocean in 1932. Write the participial phrase. Greatly interested in commercial aviation, Earhart worked for an early airline service. Write the participial phrase. Amelia Earhart, flying with a navigator, Fred Noonan, left Miami, Florida in June of 1937. Write the participial phrase. Attempting an around-the-world flight, Amelia Earhart flew a twin-engine plane. Write the participial phrase. The mystery surrounding her disappearance is still debated today. Write the participial phrase. Some historians, suspecting foul play, believe that Earhart and Noonan were forced down and killed by the Japanese. Write the participial phrase. Others, believing a different story, claim that she and Noonan crashed on a Pacific island. Ignore this one. Tell what word the underlined participial phrase modifies. Charles Lindbergh, born in 1902, was raised in Minnesota. Okay, you should have said Charles Lindbergh because this is a participial phrase, and remember that participles and participial phrases are adjectives which modify nouns. So who was born in 1902? Charles Lindbergh. Known by the nickname Lucky Lindy, Lindbergh was a pioneer of aviation. Okay, you should have chosen Lindbergh because who was known by the nickname Lucky Lindy? It was Lindbergh. In 1927, he flew solo across the Atlantic in a plane called Spirit of St. Louis. Okay, it modifies the word plane. Departing from Long Island, the plane flew into a stormy sky. Okay, you should have chosen plane because departing from Long Island, what was departing from Long Island? A plane. Awaiting Lindbergh in Paris, the crowd grew extremely anxious. Okay, you should have chosen crowd because who was awaiting Lindbergh in Paris? The crowd. Two Frenchmen attempting the same feat had recently lost their lives. Okay, you should have chosen Frenchman. The enthusiastic crowd cheered the plane landing on the strip. Okay, it's modifying plane. Emerging a hero, Lindbergh waved to the crowd. Okay, it's modifying Lindbergh. Marrying Anne Morrow in 1929, Charles Lindbergh gained more than a wife. Okay, you should have said Charles Lindbergh. Flying with Lindbergh, Anne Morrow Lindbergh served as his co-pilot and navigator on later flights. Okay, you should have chosen Anne Morrow Lindbergh.